What's going on, guys? Running it back with another replay here. We've got a showdown between the Dark Elves and Khorne. Lord Hoonerfutter, Chicken Feed on the Dark Elves here. Opal Bear helming the forces of the Blood God. We need to pause for just a second. We'll talk about the composition of the forces real quick. Dark Rider Repeater Crossbows jumping up on the number 3. Always a very good unit. Fortunately not getting nailed by the Skull Cannon shots in the early going here. Some Cold One Knights. Morathi up in the sky. Morathi's actually pretty good here. Melkoth's very powerful spell. Always has, always probably will be. And, you know, the speed reduction that it gives is a decent enough little spell in and of itself against Khorne. Khorne doesn't love being crowd controlled by speed reductions. And it still does okay damage to stuff like Bloodletters and really expensive infantry. Marauders maybe not the best use against them, but Marauder Horsemen with the throwing axes and the like, it's pretty good to cast on them. Cold One Knights rolling up to the number 1 objective. We've got some Bleak Swords in the trees here, some Witch Elves backing them up, and just, you know, a pretty cheap Dark Elf front line that can go fisticuffs and trade, you know, cost efficiently against a lot of the Khornate infantry. The thing that they would struggle really hard against is Chaos Warriors, but fortunately for the Dark Elves, there are no Chaos Warriors here. There are Bloodletters. Bloodletters will do very well against all of those targets. Same with the dual weapons, but there are the Repeater Crossbows, which will do nasty work against the dual weapons, as well as shoot down the Skull Cannons, potentially. Skull Cannons very powerful in this patch, obviously. I've talked a lot about them, even before this patch, when they were, you know, a lot less consistent. I still thought that they were really good in some matchups, Dark Elves being one of them. They're very good at controlling cavalry. Their missiles do pen through cavalry decently still. They're a little bit less effective in that role now, but it has increased their efficiency against infantry targets, so they pay for themselves much better now. And the Vortex, very powerful. I mean, all AP damage. And they regen in combat, and they run over infantry really nicely. They get a heal, they replenish ammo, everything you could possibly want in a unit now. And you're going to be seeing a lot of them. Valkia up in the sky. She's pretty good against Morathi, but Morathi can do pretty good damage to her in return. Morathi is also a lot faster, and Valkia doesn't really have a way to catch her if you're just very on point with your micro and running away. Morathi can just run around, cackle, cast Melkoths all game, while Valkia just chases her and doesn't get anything done. If you see Morathi, it's honestly better to just use Valkia to go after stuff like the Cold One Knights. She's very good at picking off models of these guys. As long as she's not all alone and getting surrounded, she'll be doing really well in those fights. Skull Cannon's getting really aggressive, taking early engagements, going after the Dark Rider Repeater Crossbows. Nice shot there, the Vortex stopping up some of the Cold One Knights, getting some good damage against them, taking a little bit of their HP off, and another really good blow. And another nice thing about that Vortex, it actually functions kind of like a mini Pit of Shades, in that it, like, locks the units that are stuck in the Vortex and, like, knocks them around, drags them into the middle of it, and look at the damage it's doing, man. Disgusting value in the early game here from the Skull Cannon. But gotta be careful here. Opal Bear definitely needs to maneuver this thing out of the direct range of the Repeater Crossbows. Does do a pretty good job of getting out of there. Fortunately, the physical resist mitigating 20% of the damage the Repeater Crossbows are doing. But they do have really good AP to get through that armor, which is a little bit more important than the magical attacks, in my opinion. But either or is a good way of dealing with Skull Cannons. Valkia still chasing Morathi, and Chicken Feed lapsing in micro a little bit, and Morathi gets hit right in the face by Valkia here. But the Crows of Cain coming out, and the Crows of Cain, Valkia hates fighting these guys. They are infantry-sized, they are very annoying, they have pretty good melee defense, and they can just lock her in place for an obnoxious amount of time and make it very difficult for her to get anything done on the battlefield. I do really like seeing these guys in this matchup for the Dark Elf players. Fleshhounds getting shot at by the repeater crossbows, who are doing decent little poke against these doggies, who aren't loving life now. Chicken Feed should probably just pull the Cold One Knights back in mass. They've taken a lot of damage getting shot at by the Skull Cannons. They have charged down some Marauders, but Bloodletter's doing a little poke in return. These guys have really good melee attack at 34 with good AP, so they can get through the melee defense of the Cold One Knights. And despite that, though, Cold One Knights continuing to take engagements here. They are charging down the right targets if they're going to be going after infantry, which is Chaff. That doesn't have great AP. Doing some good damage, but they do continue to get hammered by these Skull Cannons. 700 value on this Skull Cannon here. This one continuing to fire against the other Cold One Knights, 500 on them. And a really nice engagement for Khorne. Crows of Cain going way too deep into the backline, chasing Valkia. Dragging them through and replacing the unit with some Furies, who are absolutely shredding the Crows up in the sky here, despite having Crow Feast, which is a really good passive heal. They are just taking an absolute hammering here, and they are trying to pull back now. They're definitely going to need to get out of here, because they are losing this fight quite badly, although they are shredding the Furies a little bit in return. And oh, actually, that's the Furies trying to push through there. The Furies actually getting wrecked there at the end as they push past. They could have just stayed locked in on the Crows of Cain and probably finished off that unit, but now Chicken Feed has the Crows free again to maybe go after Valkia. They're very low, but they can still keep her occupied while Marathi and the Dark Elf forces go about their business. A really good Sleipnir. I don't know if y'all caught that, but it did really nasty work against the Bleak Swords. Roasting through those guys. It's very good for casting in the front line and then pushing through into your opponent's missiles. That can be a really good use out of that. Good rear charge onto the dual weapon Marauders. Almost breaking their leadership here, and the Witch Elves just grinding through the Bloodletters and the dual weapons here. Doing nicely for themselves. They do have Witch Brew popped, and they will trade pretty cost efficiently into Bloodletters. But those Skull Cannons, man, just continuing to pound into the Skirmish Cav and the Cold One Knights, and the Dark Elves really struggling here to find efficient value. Falling behind by almost 2,000 gold value now is Lord Chicken Feed. Running over some Bloodletters with Cold One Knights, but the Skull Cannon moves up to provide a little bit of additional assistance. Its melee attack is good enough, and it's got really high weapon strength, so it can actually kill cavalry models. Not as effective as some of the other chariots in the game at doing so, but no slouch in a pinch. Nice, nice. Was that a Sword of Khorne coming in here that early? Wow. Nailing those Bleak Swords, doing a tremendous amount of damage. Marauders following up, grinding through the remainder of these Bleak Swords and the Witch Elves. Crows of Cain don't have a great target to land on right now, and you can see the Skull Cannon buffs have really put Khorne into another tier in terms of their viability as a faction. Just the all-purpose nature of the Skull Cannons now. Before, they were very specialist. Now, they're not quite an auto-include, and they are very vulnerable if you know what you're doing against them. They can be countercharged by big AP fighters, and Marathi would be really good here to just be on a Skull Cannon patrol. She's the perfect kind of duelist against them. She's got the AP halberd that she can use. She's got really high melee attack and decent enough melee defense that they're not going to be doing tremendous amounts of damage to her. I think she does have Melkoth. Melkoth is great and all, but not having a lot of very efficient targets to cast it on here, and I think Soul Stealer is just better to heal Marathi up. It's very effective heals on her, and she would be able to continue going after the Skull Cannons. She is obviously taking quite a bit of damage from Valkia, who has a much better performance going on here. 1,400 value, chipping down some Dark Rider repeater crossbows, killing multiple models of them with each swing. Skull Cannon just happily trundling through all of these Dark Elf units here, but Cold One Knights with quite a few models left and a little bit of HP to go. If they can lock this very annoying chariot in place, they might be able to finish it off in melee combat. They are very good at killing skull cannons, speaking from experience, and that would be a really good catch for the Dark Elves to get back in this game. And they have ground a little bit of value back in return. The Bloodletters dissipating off of the battlefield here, and suddenly it's looking really nice for the Dark Elves, actually. Bloodletters taking big losses. They've paid for themselves pretty nicely, but Demonic Instability is not counted in army damage value. And Khorne is just looking really, really depleted across the field now. Fury's landing on top of Cold One Knights, getting some good damage, but Morathi landing on top of those horsemen. And just like Valkia is very good at taking out multiple models at a time of skirmish cav, so is Morathi, but Valkia gets down in there. And if Morathi dies here, Khorne might be able to play the trade game really nicely, but the Skull Cannons do get locked down by the remaining Cold One Knights, and this is where they really struggle. You can see how quickly they get ripped apart by dedicated anti-large cav. Look at the value on these Cold One Knights now that they've caught this poor little Skull Cannon. Does go down there to the Cold One Knights. Those guys doing really well here, and the Skull Cannon over here, way too deep, locked in by so many different cavalry units. Doomfire Warlocks coming out to also do some good damage against this poor artillery piece, and down it's going to go. That Demonic Instability is so punishing, and you can see now that the Dark Elves have ground back a little bit of an advantage in the value game here. Valkia getting locked in combat against Witch Elves, despite not having amazing AP on their attacks. It is still 16, and they have a really good bonus versus infantry of 8. With the Witch Brew active, they've got 80 melee attack to hit in against her 55 melee defense. That's going to be more than enough to chip through Valkia here. If they can just stay on top of her and continue layering attacks, you can see how much damage they're doing as they get hits in, but Valkia does manage to get disengaged, but for some reason goes right back through them. I'm not sure what's going on here with Valkia. Opal Bear making a few mistakes here with the micro on Valkia, but fortunately the Witch Elves do push past her to get on top of the dual weapon warriors, who get absolutely wrecked by the Doomfire Warlock charge, man. Cold One Knights helping out there, as well as the Witch Elves. More Cold One Knights sacrificing themselves for their Druchii Masters, getting in on the Marauders of Khorne, who have really struggled in this matchup so far. Not holding up too well. That's why I prefer Chaos Warriors. You can bring a lot fewer of them, but they hold so well in this matchup because they have silver shields against the Dark Rider repeater crossbows, who just absolutely obliterate Marauders. Because bronze shields are nice, it is quite a bit of damage mitigation, but they get hit really hard when the missiles do get past them. That it is quite punishing. And dual weapon warriors, leave these guys at home, honestly, if you're going up against a missile faction, because they are pin cushions and they're getting absolutely wrecked right now. Too much heavy armor on a lot of the mobility. And the mobility that doesn't have great armor is Doomfire Warlocks with an insane amount of physical resistance. As you can see, 40%. And they're just going to run over those Marauders all day if given the opportunity. And these guys did get cheaper. I can't remember what other buffs they got. Maybe a little bit of additional HP, I think. I'm not 100% sure. Somebody let me know in the comments if you know. But the cost reduction alone was really nice. They were like bordering on viable, but with the reductions, they're still very glass cannon-y. But I think with some time, I think people will find that their bound spells and really good cycle charging, as well as control abilities with the poison and the magical attacks too, getting in against demonic units like the Fleshhounds is really nice. And that is going to be it for the Forces of Khorne. They do tap out there, and Lord Chickenfeed takes a win there. Really nicely played, honestly. Chickenfeed got wrecked in the early going there, but doing a good job of grinding through the infantry first, and then punishing the Skull Cannons, which were massively overextended. Opal Bear going a little too deep with those very expensive war machines. Excuse me, guys. You know, drinking a little bit of coffee. The classic coffee indigestion hitting me there. But Dark Rider repeater crossbows doing nicely. The Cold One Knights not doing well the first time around, but subsequent summons of them doing really nicely. Very good value on these two in the reinforcement pool. And yeah, the Crows of Cain, despite getting nailed by those Furies, stuck around the rest of that game and got back, you know, pretty much their value. I believe they cost about 700 thereabouts. Really nice performance from those guys. We'll go see how Marathi was doing. Didn't really get a whole lot done. I think that you know, she did a good job of occupying Valkia's attention for quite a while in that game and just being very annoying and not getting locked down and killed was very well done by Chicken Feed, but I think Soul Stealer is just better because it provides a big heal. It's very good against Skull Cannons. Despite the spell resistance that Khorne has access to, it is still doing a decent chunk of damage, and, you know, Soul Stealer healing up your Lord is just very consistent and very nice, and there's nothing that Khorne can do to mitigate the healing, more importantly. Witch Elves also doing decently there. Just, you know, I mean, these very, very wild and frenzied ladies, proving their prowess in melee combat, shipping through a lot of the Marauders, being very stalwart with their decent leadership, and Witch Brew helping them against the Bloodletters, most of whom did okay, but not quite paying for themselves there on a lot of these guys, and I really, like I said, the Chaos Warriors are just way better in this matchup. I would just get rid of the Bloodletters here. Bloodletters are really good against Blackguard Corsairs and the like, as well as Blackguard of Nagaron and Harkonneth Executioners. So you certainly want a couple of them. I would prefer to bring them in the reinforcement pool, just because they are very fast. They can get up to reinforce the Chaos Warrior front line really nicely. And Chaos Warriors with those silver shields can just weather through fire, while the Skull Cannons can just sit back there and just trade really efficiently. They were doing a lot of the heavy lifting in that game. But once the front line was gone, they didn't have any protection for the real aggressive positioning that they were holding there. And just got surrounded by their counters and completely crushed there. And then Chicken Feed from there. Having superior mobility at the end. Khorne does have really good mobile units, but a little bit too many to answer in this particular matchup here for the forces of the Blood God. That's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope that y'all have enjoyed this replay, and I will catch you on the next one. GG's. Peace.